of life after death, from near death to heaven and back. A man from Seattle, working as a supervisor in the juvenile probation department for King County, experienced a life-altering event on May 5, 2006. Known for his dedication to helping adolescents, he often said he would work until the day he died, an unexpectedly prophetic statement. On that fateful day, he developed a kidney stone on his right side. Having dealt with kidney stones before, he initially tried to endure the pain, but this time was different. The pain persisted, leading him to visit the emergency room. Expecting the usual routine of morphine and pain relief, he was surprised to learn that he also had a kidney infection. The doctors administered antibiotics and scheduled an operation to break up the stones. What could possibly go wrong? The operation went smoothly, but unknown to the medical team, the antibiotics failed to combat the infection effectively. When the stones were broken up, the infection spread into his bloodstream, causing sepsis and multiple organ failure. He was clinically dead for an hour and 45 minutes. During this time, he had an extraordinary experience. As a born-again Christian, he felt little fear, believing he was going to heaven. He described the sensation of leaving his body and shooting through the hospital floors, the sky, and even outer space at an unimaginable speed. He likened the journey to a Bible verse: "To be absent from the body is to be in the presence of the Lord." Upon reaching heaven, he felt an overwhelming sense of peace and belonging. Everything in heaven, from the trees to the flowers, welcomed him. The most profound desire he felt was to see Jesus Christ face to face. He journeyed through a forest where the trees parted before him, leading him to a clearing where he saw Jesus. A lifelong wish of his was fulfilled in that moment. Overwhelmed with gratitude, he fell to his knees and gazed at Jesus' feet, thanking him repeatedly. He realized that the only reason he was in heaven was because of Jesus' sacrifice. As he looked up, he felt immense love radiating from Jesus' entire being. When their eyes finally met, Jesus looked at him with unconditional love, as if he had never disobeyed. His eyes held an infinite depth of love and forgiveness that he had never felt before. That truly struck him. It was overwhelming. He realized that when Jesus says he forgives you, he truly forgets it. The Bible speaks of this in the 8th and 10th chapters of Hebrews, and he experienced it firsthand. He felt an eternal sense of being, knowing that while his body had died, the real him would never die. After this profound realization, Jesus looked at him and said, "No, it's not your time. Go back." It was so direct and a matter of fact. Surprisingly, he was okay with it. Instead of retracing his steps through the forest, he found himself soaring above it, as if flying wasn't the right word. It was more like simply being where you wanted to be. When he reached the place he knew he'd be leaving from, there wasn't a door or anything physical. It was just a sense that the next step would take him out of that realm. His body wasn't ready, and he was joyful that he had had more time in heaven. So he turned back, facing the forest, sensing Jesus on the other side. But what he sees next is mesmerizing. Moving to the left of the forest, he saw creation in a way that was overwhelmingly beautiful. The mountains appeared like moving ocean waves, vibrant and alive. He felt like he was meant to stay and experience this forever. Eventually, he returned to Jesus, approaching him from a different angle. As he bowed before him again, Jesus spoke to him some more. His light, a brilliant and loving light, wrapped around him, infusing him with warmth and peace. Once more he said, "No, it's not your time. Go back." He flew over the trees again, reaching the edge where he would step back into his body. But again he sensed his body wasn't ready. He explored more, this time to the right, encountering vibrant blue waters and rivers teeming with life. The colors were more vivid than anything on earth. Upon returning to Jesus for the final time, he saw his family. His grandmother, Mary, stood at the front of a group of relatives spanning generations. Their joy and love were palpable, a pure reflection of heavenly relationships. His family's presence confirmed that they had been there all along, but this time he focused on them, feeling an indescribable connection. Seeing them in such a state of happiness and unity was a revelation. Jesus looked at him with those loving eyes once more and said, "No, it's not your time. Go back." All of creation seemed to move aside, acknowledging that he was speaking to him. He felt like a soldier receiving a command, ready to obey. As he prepared to leave, his grandmother spoke. "Bring as many of us back with you as you can." Her words resonated deeply, emphasizing the importance of sharing the love and reality of heaven. What happened next was a miracle. Returning to his body was a mix of emotions. He re-entered to find the medical staff surprised as his heart monitor began to beep again. The stark contrast between the peace of heaven and the chaos of the hospital room was jarring. Physically, he was weak and needed time to recover, but spiritually, he felt renewed. His experience changed everything. He now lives with a greater sense of purpose, knowing our time here is brief and every moment is significant. He strives to love others deeply and share the message of God's love, valuing each relationship with a newfound appreciation. Seeing animals and other beings in heaven, vibrant and full of life, added to the wonder of his experience. This journey has forever altered his perspective on life, death, and the eternal. The memories of heaven stayed with him, vivid and poignant. He had been astonished by the number of animals he encountered there. They were everywhere, seamlessly integrated into the landscape. There were familiar creatures from Earth and others that were completely new to him. Each one seemed to have a special place in heaven, living in perfect harmony with each other and their surroundings. This sight drove home the realization that God's care extended to all of his creation, not just humans. His focus had primarily been on Jesus and his family, so he didn't interact directly with the animals. Yet their presence was undeniable, filled with joy and peace. It was as though they were praising God in their own unique way, contributing to the celestial symphony of harmony. Heaven's beauty defied earthly description. The colors were more vibrant than anything seen on earth. The light permeated everything, warm and inviting, never harsh. Trees, flowers, and even inanimate objects seemed to possess a life of their own. Everything existed in a state of perfect harmony, devoid of decay or imperfection. It was beauty beyond imagination. One of the most profound experiences was when Jesus imparted knowledge directly into his mind or spirit. This download of information was not communicated through words, but through an innate understanding. He suddenly knew things about God, heaven, and life that he had never grasped before. Though some of this knowledge faded upon his return to his earthly body, the essence of it remained, profoundly altering his perceptions. Among the insights gained was a deeper understanding of God's love. What he thought he knew paled in comparison to the profound love he experienced in heaven. He also gained insights into the nature of eternity, the significance of earthly choices, and the reality of spiritual warfare. These were concepts that earthly minds struggled to comprehend fully. But there's something more important he learned that day. He became more aware of the spiritual forces at play in the world, both good and evil. This realization emphasized the importance of prayer and the necessity of donning the full armor of God as described in the Bible. His perspective on earth was irrevocably changed. Death was no longer something to be feared, but a transition to something infinitely more beautiful. This understanding didn't mean he was in a hurry to die. He recognized that God had a purpose for him on earth, and he was determined to fulfill it. But the thought of returning to heaven when his time truly came brought him a sense of peace. Time on earth seemed fleeting compared to the eternal presence of heaven, making earthly struggles appear insignificant. This realization deepened his mindfulness of how he spent each moment, understanding its eternal significance. Seeing unexpected faces in heaven reshaped his view on salvation. He became less judgmental, recognizing that God's grace and mercy extend beyond human understanding. Salvation isn't about following strict rules, but about accepting Jesus and his sacrifice. He learned to avoid making assumptions about anyone's spiritual state, knowing only God understands a person's heart. His sense of purpose on earth grew, following a message from his grandmother to bring as many of us back with you as you can. He felt a strong responsibility to share his story and help others understand heaven and God's love. Each day became an opportunity to live with the awareness that earthly actions have eternal consequences. His relationships with others transformed. He saw each person as deeply loved by God, which made him more patient, compassionate, and eager to share the love he had encountered. He also valued family relationships more, understanding their significance both in this life and in eternity. The feeling of welcome in heaven was unparalleled. On earth, he had often felt out of place, but in heaven, those feelings vanished. Everything around him conveyed a profound sense of belonging and acceptance. This overwhelming love and welcome left a lasting impression. Heaven changed his view of the body. While physical bodies are important, they are temporary vessels for eternal spirits. In heaven, he felt more authentically himself, which made him less concerned with physical appearance and more focused on nurturing his spirit. Though he was focused on his own experience, he sensed that everyone in heaven was sharing the same joy, peace, and love. Each person experienced their perfect joy while being united in worship and love for God. Returning to earth was challenging. The beauty of heaven made him reluctant to leave, but he felt a divine purpose in being sent back, which gave him peace about his return. He now views his life on earth as a mission, to share his heavenly experience and help others prepare for eternity. Worship had taken on new meaning. In heaven, worship was a constant state of being, filled with pure joy and love. This understanding made him approach worship on earth with deeper enthusiasm and awareness, reflecting the heart's purest intentions. His perspective on work and daily activities shifted. He saw every task as an opportunity to bring a bit of heaven to earth, approaching them with the love and joy he experienced in heaven. This made him more intentional with his time and resources. He understood that prayer was a vital connection between heaven and earth. Although he didn't see specific prayers being received, he felt that God was intimately aware of and involved in earthly lives, deepening his appreciation for prayer. He saw angels in heaven and understood their purpose. They were constantly engaged in worship and fulfilling God's will, which gave him a greater appreciation for the unseen spiritual forces at work. But that's not all. His experience impacted his relationships with non-believers. He felt a greater urgency to share his faith, but approached it with patience and love, understanding that everyone's journey is unique. He aimed to invite others to faith rather than push them. He gained insight into free will and God's sovereignty, realizing that they work together in ways that are hard to grasp fully. God's love allows real choices, even when they result in suffering, but he works to bring good out of every situation. Though he didn't encounter evil in heaven, he understood its nature by contrast. The goodness and love he experienced showed him the stark reality of evil on earth, reinforcing the importance of bringing God's light into the darkness. His near-death experience removed any fear of death. He now sees death as a transition to something more beautiful and welcoming. While he's not in a hurry to leave, he welcomes his eventual transition with joy, knowing what awaits. The core message he shares is that God's love surpasses all understanding. Heaven is real and more beautiful than imagined. Our earthly choices and actions have eternal significance. The key is a relationship with Jesus, not perfection or rule following. In the end, he understood that while his experience is profound, the central story is God's love for humanity. He hopes his story encourages others to seek God and live with an eternal perspective. His tale inspires reflection on life, death, and what comes after. If you made it all the way to this part in the video, you may qualify for our membership, so you might want to listen closely. It's an